The veterinarian looked at the retired SEAL and said quietly, "It's time. Signing this will let your dog go in peace." The soldier stared at the paper, then at the dog who had survived everything with him, and whispered, "Not yet." What happened after he took his dying dog home wasn't science, wasn't logic, and no one was prepared for it. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe for more stories of faith, courage, and the miracles God hides in the darkest places. Winter settles over Denver like a held breath, streets hushed, windows glowing faintly, snow absorbing every sound, as if the city itself is waiting for something it cannot name. Michael Carter had learned to live inside waiting. Waiting had followed him home from war, into the small house at the edge of the city, into the long evenings when the television stayed dark, into the mornings when he woke before dawn with no orders to receive. It lived in his bones now, a familiar pressure, the sense that something important would happen if he stayed still long enough. He told himself this was normal. He told himself many things. What he did not tell himself, what he refused to name, was how much of his life now revolved around Rex. Rex lay near the back door, close enough to feel the draft, far enough to avoid the worst of it. Michael noticed the way the dog listened more than he moved. That had always been Rex's strength. Even now, when rising took effort, the listening remained sharp. A truck passed somewhere down the street. Rex's ears lifted, then settled. Nothing worth reacting to. Michael felt an ache in his chest at that, pride mixed with fear. A soldier recognizing another soldier who still kept watch. Michael poured coffee and forgot to drink it. His thoughts wandered, looping back on themselves. He counted small things the way he used to count steps on patrol. The tick of the kitchen clock, the hum of the heater, the faint scrape of Rex shifting his weight. He measured time by these sounds, by the space between them. He told himself he was being practical. He told himself he was being kind. He told himself that love sometimes meant letting go before things became unbearable. He had repeated these sentences so often they felt memorized, like a briefing delivered without conviction. Rex looked at him. Not pleading, not demanding, just present. Michael knelt, resting a hand against the floor. Rex did not rush forward. He moved when Michael moved, matching him steady as ever. The contact, brief, familiar, sent a tremor through Michael that surprised him. He had faced gunfire without flinching, had held pressure on wounds while listening to radios crackle with bad news. This was different. This was quieter. It felt more dangerous. "I know," Michael murmured, though he wasn't sure what he meant. He had noticed the changes weeks ago, the hesitation before standing, the way Rex conserved energy, choosing his moments with care. There was no drama in it, no collapse, just a gradual narrowing of the world. Michael recognized that pattern, too. He had lived it himself after the war, when he had learned how small a life could become if you let it. The appointment sat heavy in his pocket, a folded card he hadn't looked at since the clinic gave it to him. He did not need to read it to know the time. He had memorized it the way he memorized coordinates, once and forever. As he reached for his coat, doubt surged hard and fast. Not panic. Panic was loud. This was colder, more precise. He had promised himself he would not make this decision out of fear. He would not run from discomfort. He would do what was right. But what was right when the one you were protecting could not tell you what they wanted? Rex rose slowly. Not because he was told to, because Michael was moving, because that was what Rex did. The effort was controlled, deliberate. Michael felt his throat tighten. He turned away, ashamed of the relief he felt when Rex managed it. The drive through Denver passed in fragments. Red lights, snow piling at the edges of the road, Michael's reflection in the windshield, older than he felt, younger than he deserved to be. Rex watched the world slide by, calm, alert, no fear. That, more than anything, unsettled Michael. Fear would have been easier. Fear would have given him something to fight. The clinic was warm, too warm. The smell, clean, sharp, hit him as soon as he stepped inside. He had been here before, not often. Enough to know the rhythm of the place, the way hope and resignation coexisted in the same hallway. A woman at the desk greeted him by name. That surprised him. He wondered how many times he had come here without realizing it mattered. He nodded, said very little. Words felt unnecessary. They sat. Rex did not lie down right away. He stayed upright, eyes tracking movement, measuring the space. Michael sat beside him, hand resting where it had always rested. He told himself he was memorizing the moment, just in case. That thought landed heavier than he expected. He remembered another waiting room years ago halfway across the world. He remembered the way silence could stretch until it felt like a test. He remembered thinking that if he held himself together, everything else would follow. The door opened. A man in a white coat stepped out. Calm voice, neutral expression. Michael recognized the tone immediately, the voice of someone who had learned how to carry bad news without breaking under its weight. They moved into an examination room. Rex walked in on his own. Michael watched every step, every pause, as if the room were a minefield only he could see. The examination itself passed in pieces. Gentle hands. Quiet instruments. Rex endured it without complaint. Michael stood close, breathing carefully, aware of his own heartbeat in a way that felt foreign. The doctor spoke, not all at once, carefully, about age, about limits, about comfort. He did not say the word outright, but Michael heard it anyway. He always did. The unspoken had been part of his life for too long to miss. Michael nodded. He asked a few questions that sounded reasonable. He heard himself answering when spoken to. Inside, something tightened, wound down, pulled taut. He looked at Rex. There was no drama there either, no resistance, just presence. The same steady attention that had followed Michael through storms he no longer talked about. Michael felt the pull of two instincts collide. One told him to accept what could not be changed, to make the hard call cleanly, decisively. The other, older, deeper, told him never to leave a teammate behind if there was still breath, still will. He had trusted that instinct before. It had cost him. It had saved him. He had never learned how to tell the difference in advance. The doctor stepped out to give him time. Michael stayed where he was. He did not touch Rex at first. He simply breathed, matching the rhythm beside him. He thought about the nights Rex had stayed awake when Michael couldn't sleep. The mornings Rex had gotten him outside when the walls felt too close. He thought about how survival was not just about staying alive. Sometimes it was about staying human. "I don't know," Michael said quietly. Rex did not answer. He shifted closer. That was enough to break the stalemate inside Michael's chest, not with certainty, but with resolve. He did not suddenly feel brave. He did not feel wise. He felt responsible. When the doctor returned, Michael was standing. "I need more time," he said. His voice did not shake. "I want to take him home." The doctor studied him for a long moment. Michael held the gaze, the way he had held many like it before. He was not asking permission. He was asking to be understood. The doctor nodded slowly. He explained risks. He explained what might happen. Michael listened. He accepted it all. As they left the clinic, snow had begun to fall again. Rex stepped outside and paused, lifting his head as if to read the air. Michael waited. For the first time that day, he did not feel like he was running out of time. Snow drifts thinly across the clinic parking lot as evening deepens, the cold sharpening every sound while the building behind them hums with restrained light and unspoken consequences. Michael Carter did not start the engine right away. He sat with his hands on the steering wheel, feeling the faint vibration of Rex's breathing through the seat, letting the moment settle into his body. The decision to take Rex home had not arrived with relief, only with a heavier form of responsibility. In the clinic, choosing had felt like standing ground. Out here, in the quiet, it felt like carrying something fragile through enemy territory. He had made calls like this before, calls that went against procedure, against recommendations delivered in calm, professional voices. Sometimes those calls saved lives. Sometimes they left scars that never fully healed. The difference, he had learned, was never obvious at the moment of choice. It revealed itself later, slowly, like frost creeping across glass. Rex shifted slightly, adjusting to the stillness, and Michael felt the familiar pull of awareness toward the dog's presence. Rex was not anxious. There was no panic, no confusion, only a steady attentiveness, as if the dog understood that the rules had changed, but the bond had not. That calm unsettled Michael more than fear would have. He had always trusted fear. Fear sharpened instinct. Calm demanded faith. As he drove away from the clinic, the city unfolded in muted tones, streetlights blurring through the windshield. Michael's mind kept returning to the doctor's words, carefully chosen, never absolute. Age, decline, comfort, words designed to guide without commanding. Michael respected that. He also resented it. In the field, clarity was survival. Here, ambiguity ruled, and ambiguity left room for doubt to grow. He wondered whether this was courage or selfishness, whether bringing Rex home was an act of loyalty or an inability to let go. The question followed him down familiar streets, past places he rarely entered anymore. He had built his life small on purpose, fewer variables, fewer risks. Rex had fit into that life not as a companion to be managed, but as a constant to be trusted. At home, Michael moved slowly, aware of every step, every sound. Rex followed without prompting, not out of obedience, but out of alignment. That had always been the difference between them and everything else in Michael's life. Orders were not needed. Presence was enough. Michael prepared food with the same care he once prepared equipment, checking and rechecking, not because he doubted the process, but because the act itself calmed him. When Rex ate, it was not with urgency, but with intention. The sight caught Michael off guard. He had expected reluctance, refusal, the signs of a body giving up. Instead, there was participation. Not strength, not recovery, but engagement. It stirred something cautious in Michael's chest, something he refused to name. He watched Rex move through the house, choosing where to settle, where to pause. The movements were measured, conservative, but they were choices. Michael recognized that pattern intimately. He had lived by it after the war, rationing energy, selecting moments, refusing waste. That recognition brought with it a wave of memory he did not invite, but did not push away either. Nights overseas when exhaustion pressed in from all sides, when the difference between stopping and continuing came down to will rather than capacity. He had learned then that survival was sometimes a quiet decision renewed moment by moment. As the evening wore on, Michael found himself listening more closely than he had in weeks, to the cadence of Rex's breathing, to the subtle sounds that indicated effort or ease. He realized with a start that this was not new. He had been listening like this for years, attuned to shifts others would miss. Rex had taught him that. The dog's presence had anchored him when his own thoughts threatened to scatter. That realization carried weight. If Rex was still teaching him something now, then perhaps the story was not finished. Michael sat on the floor, back against the wall, letting the cold from outside seep in around the edges of the house. He did not speak. Words felt unnecessary. Rex settled nearby, close enough that their awareness overlapped. In that shared quiet, Michael confronted a truth he had avoided since the clinic. He was afraid not of Rex dying, but of what would remain if Rex did. The house would still stand. The city would continue. But the witness to his private battles, the being who had known him without translation, would be gone. That thought tightened something deep and old inside him. He told himself that love was not ownership, that staying was not the same as saving. He told himself many things. Rex rose later, unexpectedly, and moved toward the door. Not quickly, not easily, but on his own. Michael stood at once, instinct overriding thought. He opened the door to the cold, ready to intervene, ready to lift if needed. Rex stepped into the threshold, tested the air, then took a few deliberate steps onto the snow-dusted porch. Michael felt his breath catch. It was not a miracle. It was not recovery. It was capacity asserting itself, however briefly. Rex stood there, absorbing the night, as if confirming something internally. Then he turned back, satisfied, and returned inside. Michael closed the door and leaned against it, heart racing with an emotion he could not yet trust. Hope was dangerous. He knew that better than most. But so was despair. That night, as the house settled and the city quieted further, Michael lay awake, listening. Rex did not pace. He did not whine. He slept, deeply enough that his breathing softened into a rhythm Michael had not heard in days. Michael counted those breaths without realizing it, the way he once counted seconds between explosions, between orders. Somewhere between one breath and the next, a question took shape, quiet but persistent. If Rex could still choose to stand, even for a moment, what right did Michael have to decide that the fight was over? The thought did not bring answers, it brought resolve. And as Michael finally allowed his eyes to close, he wondered how long such resolve could hold before demanding proof. Night presses against the house as snow thickens, the porch light carving a small island of warmth where the cold pauses, listening. Morning arrived without ceremony. Michael Carter woke before the light, the way he always did, trained by years when dawn meant movement or consequence. For a moment, he did not remember where he was, only that something important was still unresolved. Then he heard it, the steady, unhurried rhythm of Rex's breathing, not labored, not strained, simply present. The sound settled Michael back into himself, and with it came the quiet weight of the choice he had made. He had refused the ending that had been offered. He had carried Rex home instead of signing a final permission slip. That decision did not feel like defiance anymore. It felt like responsibility unfolding. Michael rose carefully, moving as if the air itself might bruise what little balance existed. Rex opened his eyes when Michael stood, not startled, just aware. That awareness had always been Rex's greatest strength. Even now, it remained intact. Michael crouched, letting the silence stretch. He expected uncertainty, perhaps regret. Instead, what he felt was a kind of vigilance, the sort that comes after a decision has been made and cannot be taken back. Outside, the world continued as if nothing had changed. Cars passed in the distance. Snow fell with patient indifference. Michael prepared food again, not with hope, but with intent. He was not trying to coax a recovery. He was honoring the time he had claimed. Rex ate slowly, thoughtfully, as if conserving more than energy. Michael watched without comment, his mind cataloging small signs the way he once cataloged terrain. There was no sudden strength, no surge, but there was willingness, engagement. When Rex finished, he did not retreat immediately. He lingered, then stood. The movement was deliberate, controlled. Michael did not move to assist. He waited, heart tightening, hands steady at his sides. Rex took a step, then another. The floor creaked softly under the weight of effort. Michael felt something loosen inside his chest, not relief, but recognition. This was not recovery, it was resilience. The difference mattered. Throughout the day, Michael structured time around Rex's pace, not out of sentiment, but respect. He had learned long ago that forcing progress was the fastest way to lose it. Rex moved when he chose, rested when he needed, and Michael followed that rhythm without argument. The house adjusted itself around that choice. Silence became intentional rather than empty. Michael found his thoughts drifting back to the clinic, to the calm certainty in the doctor's voice, and then to his own response, spoken without anger, but with finality. I need more time." He wondered if the doctor had believed him or merely accepted him. The distinction mattered less now. What mattered was what stood in front of him, breathing, choosing, enduring. As the afternoon light shifted, Rex approached the door again. Michael noticed the pattern immediately. He felt the familiar surge of instinct, the urge to intervene, to shield. He checked himself. He opened the door and stepped back. The cold rushed in, sharp and honest. Rex paused at the threshold, testing the boundary between inside and out. Michael's body tensed, but he did not speak. Rex stepped forward onto the porch, into the cold air. The snow did not frighten him. It slowed him, demanded calculation. He accepted that demand. Michael watched, acutely aware of how fragile this moment was, how easily it could tip into failure. Rex stood there for several seconds, breathing in the winter, as if committing something to memory. Then, without urgency, he turned back inside. Michael closed the door and leaned his forehead briefly against the wood, eyes closed. He did not call it hope. He called it evidence. That night, Michael slept in the chair near where Rex settled, not because he feared something would happen, but because he did not want to miss anything that did. He woke often, counting breaths without realizing it, measuring time in quiet increments. Rex slept deeply. His body relaxed in a way Michael had not seen in days. It reminded him of nights overseas when exhaustion finally claimed even the most vigilant among them, when sleep was not surrender but necessity. By morning, something subtle had shifted. Rex rose with less hesitation. Not much, enough to notice. Michael's thoughts began to sharpen around the implications. If this was a final rally, then it deserved respect, not celebration. If it was something else, something that extended beyond expectation, then it would reveal itself in time. Michael did not reach for conclusions. He had learned the cost of that. Instead, he focused on presence, on matching Rex's steadiness with his own, on honoring each small act without demanding it become a promise. As days passed, the pattern held. Rex did not regain strength, but he regained agency. He chose where to rest, when to move, when to engage. Michael adjusted his life around those choices without resentment. He found himself speaking less, listening more. The house filled with a sense of purpose that did not require explanation. Michael understood then that refusing an ending did not guarantee a future. It only created space. What filled that space was not his to control. That realization brought him an unexpected calm. He had spent much of his life believing that survival depended on force, on action, on decisiveness. Sitting there now, watching Rex navigate each moment with quiet determination, Michael recognized a different truth. Sometimes survival was not about pushing forward. Sometimes it was about staying. Late one evening, as snow began again, Michael noticed a change that did not fit neatly into his careful observations. Rex's attention shifted inward, then outward again, as if something unseen had entered the equation. Michael felt the hair on his arms rise, not with fear, but with anticipation he could not justify. He did not know what it meant. He only knew that the story was still moving, quietly, beneath the surface. And for the first time since leaving the clinic, Michael allowed himself to wonder not how this would end, but what it was preparing him for. Winter loosens its grip just enough to let days lengthen, the snow retreating into quiet corners as the house holds a gentler light, as if making room for something new without announcing it. Michael Carter sensed the change before he understood it. It arrived as a disturbance in routine, the kind that never announces itself loudly, but insists on being noticed. Rex moved differently, not stronger, not weaker, but purposeful in a way Michael had not seen before. The dog's attention narrowed, then expanded, alternating between inward focus and vigilant awareness of the space around them. Michael had learned to read those shifts overseas when a perimeter changed shape without warning. He did not rush. He waited. The waiting felt different now, less like dread and more like readiness. The moment itself came quietly, without drama, without the chaos Michael had half expected and half feared. When he realized what was happening, his first reaction was not surprise but awe edged with disbelief. Life had chosen its own timing. Rex endured the hours with a composure that humbled him, drawing on something deeper than strength, something older than instinct alone. Michael stayed close without interfering, present without imposing, understanding that this was not a moment to manage, but to witness. When it was over, there was a single small body pressed close to Rex, solid and unmistakably alive. The puppy was larger than Michael would have imagined, steady in a way that suggested certainty rather than chance. Michael felt a strange tightening in his chest. Not joy exactly, not fear, but the recognition that the line he had been walking had just extended itself forward. Rex regarded the puppy with a focus that bordered on solemnity. There was no confusion in that gaze, no hesitation, only acknowledgement. Michael understood then that this was not an accident of biology, it was a transfer of purpose. In the days that followed, the house adjusted again, reshaping itself around a new center of gravity. The puppy fed with an appetite that surprised Michael, not frantic, not careless, but confident, as if abundance were expected rather than hoped for. Rex watched every movement, every sound, intervening only when necessary, correcting gently, consistently. Michael noticed how little effort those corrections required. They were not commands, they were signals, layered with meaning, delivered through timing rather than force. Rex was teaching, not tricks, not obedience in the shallow sense, but comprehension. The puppy learned quickly, responding to tone before words, to pauses before gestures. Michael recognized the method immediately. It was the same language he had once learned in places where noise invited danger. He found himself speaking less, allowing the rhythm Rex set to carry the instruction forward. There was no jealousy in that, no sense of displacement. If anything, Michael felt relieved. Rex was not withdrawing. Rex was investing. The puppy followed Rex's lead with a seriousness that belied its age, absorbing cues, mirroring restraint, testing boundaries only long enough to understand them. Michael watched from the edges, aware that he was being evaluated as much as the puppy was being trained. Rex included him in the lessons without ceremony, positioning Michael as reference point, as constant. The bond between dog and man did not diminish. It expanded, reshaping itself to include the next generation without dilution. In quieter moments, when the puppy slept, Rex would settle near Michael, close enough to touch, and Michael would feel the weight of what was happening pressed gently against his thoughts. He did not romanticize it. He did not name it a miracle. He understood age and limits too well for that. But he also understood continuity. He had spent years believing that endings were absolute, that survival carved clean lines between before and after. Watching Rex now, guiding the puppy with patient authority, Michael saw a different truth. Some endings prepared their own successors, some departures left instructions behind. The puppy's intelligence revealed itself not in cleverness, but in restraint. It learned when not to move, when to wait, when to observe. Michael noticed how Rex corrected impatience with stillness, how the puppy adjusted without resentment. The lessons were quiet, relentless, cumulative. Michael found his own posture changing in response, his movements slowing to match the tempo being set. He realized with a jolt that Rex was not only teaching the puppy how to live in the world, Rex was reminding Michael how to inhabit it as well. Days passed with a peace that felt provisional, like a ceasefire both sides respected without trusting. Michael did not pretend this balance would last. He had lived long enough to know better. But he allowed himself to move within it fully, to be present, without scanning constantly for the moment it would break. There were times he caught Rex watching him watch the puppy, and in those moments Michael sensed an unspoken assessment taking place. Was the lesson landing? Was the responsibility understood? Michael did not answer aloud. He adjusted his actions instead, stepping in only when invited, stepping back when guidance belonged elsewhere. At night, the house held a new rhythm. The puppy slept deeply, untroubled, while Rex remained half awake, attentive, even in rest. Michael recognized that state, too, the way sleep could coexist with vigilance when something valuable needed guarding. He wondered how much time Rex believed remained, whether animals carried such calculations consciously or simply acted as if every moment mattered equally. The question stayed with him, unanswered. One evening, as the light faded and the puppy practiced a hesitant response to Michael's voice, Rex intervened, correcting the angle of attention with a subtle movement. The puppy adjusted immediately, understanding without resistance. Michael felt a flicker of unease then, not fear, but anticipation sharpened by respect. He understood that this instruction was not casual. It was preparation. The thought lingered as the night settled, as Rex positioned himself between Michael and the puppy with quiet deliberation. The arrangement felt intentional, symbolic without being sentimental. Michael did not ask what came next. He sensed that the answer was already being written, one deliberate lesson at a time. Late winter returns with a harder edge, clouds hanging low over Denver as the air grows brittle again, carrying the quiet warning that reprieves are temporary and balance never lasts. Michael Carter noticed the change in Rex the way he noticed shifts in weather before storms, not through one dramatic sign, but through accumulation. Small hesitations layered over one another until they formed a pattern he could no longer ignore. Rex still rose when needed, still watched the puppy with unwavering attention, but the cost of those actions had increased. Michael saw it in the pauses that came afterward, in the way Rex conserved himself more deliberately, choosing stillness where movement had once been instinctive. The peace that had settled over the house began to feel fragile, like thin ice that held only if no one moved too quickly. Michael adjusted again, narrowing the world further, removing anything unnecessary. He told himself this was preparation, not surrender. When Rex faltered one morning, not falling, but failing to recover his balance as quickly as before, the decision formed without argument. Michael did not wait. He loaded Rex into the truck and drove back to the clinic, the puppy left behind for the first time, watched over by a space that suddenly felt too quiet. The clinic smelled the same as before, but Michael felt different walking in. There was no crisis energy this time, no sharp urgency. This was something slower, heavier. The veterinarian, Dr. Alan Brooks, greeted him with recognition that carried both respect and restraint. Michael appreciated that. He did not need reassurance. He needed honesty. The examination was thorough but unhurried. Rex endured it with the same calm dignity he had shown in every other trial. Michael stood close, listening, not just to words but to the spaces between them. When Dr. Brooks finally spoke, there was no hesitation in his voice. He explained that what they were seeing was not an illness to be fought or cured. It was age asserting itself, systems wearing down after a lifetime of work. Supportive care could ease discomfort. Time could be stretched but not reshaped. There were no treatments that would reverse the course, no interventions that would change the destination. Michael absorbed this without outward reaction. Inside, something tightened, then steadied. This was a language he understood. Limits, endpoints. The doctor did not recommend an immediate decision. He spoke instead of monitoring, of comfort, of letting quality guide choices rather than fear. Michael nodded. He asked practical questions. How to manage pain, what signs to watch for, when to return. His voice remained even, controlled, as if he were planning logistics rather than confronting loss. Rex leaned into him, not seeking reassurance, simply maintaining contact. That simple pressure grounded Michael more effectively than any words could have. He felt a familiar weight settle over him, the kind that came when a mission shifted from success to extraction, from advancement to protection. On the drive home, Michael did not replay the conversation. He focused on the road, on keeping his hand steady, on not letting his thoughts outrun his discipline. He had known this was coming. He had simply allowed himself to forget for a while. The house greeted them with the puppy's restless energy, which softened instantly upon sensing Rex's fatigue. Michael watched the interaction closely. The puppy approached with eagerness, then adjusted, lowering its pace, matching Rex's stillness without being told. The lesson had already taken root. Rex acknowledged the puppy with a brief look, a subtle correction, when curiosity edged too close. Michael felt a quiet ache at that, pride tangled with grief. Even now, Rex was teaching. The days that followed settled into a new rhythm, heavier than before. Rex slept more, moved less. When he rose, it was with intention, often to check on the puppy, to reposition himself where he could observe both Michael and the small, growing life that orbited him. Michael found himself watching Rex not for signs of improvement, but for signs of discomfort, learning a different kind of vigilance. This was not about preserving strength. It was about preserving dignity. He adjusted his own expectations accordingly, releasing the hope he had not admitted to carrying. Letting go of that hope hurt more than he expected. It felt like dismantling a shelter he had built without realizing how much he relied on it. At night, Michael sat awake longer, listening to Rex's breathing change subtly with the hours. He remembered other nights, other forms of waiting, and recognized the same discipline required here: patience, presence, acceptance without passivity. Rex did not withdraw from the puppy. If anything, the instruction intensified. Shorter lessons, more frequent, delivered with unwavering consistency. Rex corrected gently but firmly, shaping responses, reinforcing awareness. Michael understood the urgency beneath the calm. Time had narrowed, and Rex was allocating it with precision. The puppy responded in kind, learning not just commands but restraint, absorbing the gravity of the attention it received. Michael felt himself included in this preparation, though nothing was said. He adjusted his behavior again, stepping into the role Rex was carving for him without being asked. There were moments, brief and sharp, when frustration surfaced. Michael caught himself wishing for another reprieve, another unexpected improvement that would buy them more time. He recognized that impulse immediately and set it aside. Wanting more time did not create it. Respecting what remained was the only form of control left. One afternoon, as light filtered weakly through the windows, Rex attempted to rise and faltered. Michael was there instantly, supporting without lifting, allowing Rex to recover dignity before stability. Rex steadied himself, leaned briefly into Michael, then moved away, signaling that assistance was enough. Michael complied. The exchange left him shaken in a way he did not show. It was a reminder that strength did not disappear all at once. It eroded unevenly, leaving behind moments that demanded judgment rather than reaction. That evening, Michael prepared food and watched Rex eat less than usual, then turned his attention to the puppy instead. The choice felt deliberate. Michael felt the weight of it settle deep in his chest. This was not decline alone. It was transition. As night fell, Michael sat on the floor, back against the wall, puppy nearby, Rex positioned where he could see them both. The arrangement felt intentional, rehearsed. Michael did not ask what came next. He sensed that the answer would not be given in words or warnings. It would arrive through absence or change or a silence that demanded acknowledgement. As he finally allowed his eyes to close, the thought surfaced unbidden, unsettling in its clarity. The peaceful days were ending, and whatever followed would require him to remember everything Rex had been teaching, long after the lessons themselves could no longer continue. Night settles deep and unbroken over the house, winter pressing close to the windows as if listening, the darkness stretching long enough to test what remains awake when the world insists on rest. Michael Carter realized early that sleep would not come. It was not restlessness in the ordinary sense, not the jittery vigilance he remembered from deployments, but a quieter refusal, as if his body understood before his mind did that this night demanded witness rather than recovery. Rex moved through the house with a strange clarity of purpose, slower than before, yet unmistakably deliberate. There was no collapse into exhaustion, no surrender to weakness. Instead, Rex chose movement sparingly, engaging the puppy in short bursts of play that were careful, almost ceremonial. The puppy responded with enthusiasm tempered by instinct, matching Rex's pace without being asked, learning again without realizing it was learning. Michael watched from his chair, every sense tuned, not intervening, not distracting. He understood that this was not play meant to tire or entertain. It was engagement meant to imprint. Rex nudged the puppy forward, then retreated just enough to invite pursuit, correcting with subtle signals when excitement threatened to override awareness. The lessons were layered, quiet, relentless. Michael recognized the pattern immediately. It was how Rex had always worked, how he had taught Michael himself to come back into the world after the war. Short exposures, controlled stress, constant presence. Hours passed without markers. The clock ticked, but Michael ignored it. Time was no longer something to measure. It was something to inhabit. Rex alternated between movement and stillness, sometimes sitting at a distance where he could observe both Michael and the puppy, sometimes repositioning himself closer, as if recalibrating lines of responsibility. There was no anxiety in it, no confusion, only intention. Michael felt a tightness build behind his ribs, an emotion that resisted naming. Gratitude, perhaps, or sorrow sharpened into respect. He thought of nights long ago when he had sat awake for different reasons, guarding teammates while they slept, knowing that vigilance itself was a form of care. Rex had always understood that truth. The puppy eventually slowed, its energy ebbing in natural waves. Rex adjusted immediately, drawing the play inward, lowering the stakes, allowing rest without abandoning attention. Michael noticed how Rex positioned himself then, body angled not toward the puppy alone, but toward the space that included Michael as well. It felt like a quiet accounting, an assessment of what still needed to be secured before the night ended. Michael shifted slightly, aware that his movement was being tracked. He met Rex's gaze, held it, then looked away first. The exchange carried weight. Rex was not asking for reassurance. Rex was confirming something already decided. As the hours deepened, Rex stopped moving altogether and sat in one place, watching, not sleeping, not resting, simply observing Michael with an intensity that made the air feel dense. Michael tried to look back casually, to dismiss the impulse rising in his chest, but the discipline failed him. He felt seen in a way that unsettled him, as if Rex were cataloging him the way one catalogs terrain before departure. Michael's thoughts turned inward, despite his effort to keep them quiet. He wondered how much Rex understood, whether animals carried awareness of endings or simply acted with clarity until clarity was no longer possible. He wondered if he himself had ever faced an ending with this kind of composure. The puppy stirred occasionally, shifting in sleep, making small sounds that prompted immediate attention from Rex, who adjusted position without standing, without fuss. Michael felt a surge of protectiveness then, not only for the puppy, but for Rex, whose body had no business carrying such vigilance anymore. He stood briefly, stretched stiff limbs, then sat again, unwilling to break the fragile equilibrium. At some point he realized that Rex had not lain down since dusk. The realization tightened his throat. He considered intervening, urging rest, offering comfort. He stopped himself. This was not about comfort. This was about completion. The night pressed on, thick and intimate. Outside, wind moved through bare branches, the sound threading through the house like a low voice. Rex remained awake, eyes open, breathing shallow but steady, watching Michael as much as watching the puppy. Michael felt an urge to speak, to mark the moment with language, and rejected it just as quickly. Words would reduce what was happening. Silence honored it. He remembered a night overseas when an older teammate had stayed awake beside him after a mission gone wrong, saying nothing. Simply occupying space until dawn made it possible to move again. Michael had not understood then what that presence meant. He understood now. Near morning, Rex finally shifted, not toward rest, but toward the puppy, adjusting the small body with careful precision, ensuring warmth, ensuring alignment. Then Rex returned to his place, sat, and looked once more at Michael. The look lingered. Michael felt the sting of moisture at the corners of his eyes and did not bother to hide it. There was no weakness in this recognition, only truth. The house felt suspended, balanced on a moment that refused to tip. Michael sensed, with a certainty that bypassed thought, that whatever Rex was doing tonight was not meant to be repeated. It was singular, final in its own way. He did not know what morning would bring. He did not know what would be missing when light returned. But he understood that this night was a gift, shaped like responsibility. As the first pale suggestion of dawn began to press against the windows, Rex remained awake, posture unchanged, watch unbroken. Michael stayed where he was, heart heavy, mind clear, accepting without comprehension that some departures begin not with movement, but with stillness sustained until it can be released. Morning arrives quietly, pale light seeping through winter clouds as the house exhales after a night held too tightly, the cold easing just enough to reveal what remains when vigilance finally loosens. Michael Carter woke with the unfamiliar sensation that something essential had already moved on. The chair beneath him creaked as he shifted, joints stiff from a night spent more awake than asleep, and for a heartbeat he listened for the sound he had learned to count without thinking. It did not come. The absence landed with precision, not like shock, but like confirmation. He rose slowly, letting the room declare itself. The puppy slept on the floor where it had been settled, breathing deep and even, untroubled by the quiet. Rex was not there. Michael did not call out. He stood still, allowing the truth to surface in its own time. He walked the length of the house, opening doors, checking the places Rex had favored when rest came hard. Each empty space answered him without malice. Outside, the porch held the same thin dusting of snow, undisturbed except by faint traces that pointed away and then vanished into the wider morning. Michael followed them as far as they could be followed, down the yard, toward the edge of what he knew. They ended without drama, not torn away, but completed, as if Rex had chosen the moment carefully and left nothing unfinished. Michael searched anyway, not out of denial, but out of respect. He walked the familiar paths, scanned the quiet streets, paused at places where Rex had once stood to read the air. He did not rush. This was not a recovery operation. It was a farewell conducted through motion rather than words. As the search widened and yielded nothing, Michael felt the weight in his chest shift from tension to gravity. Rex had not gotten lost. Rex had left. The distinction mattered. He returned home as the light strengthened, the city resuming its muted routine around him. Inside, the puppy stirred, lifted its head, and then settled again when Michael entered the room. Michael knelt and rested a hand on the floor beside it, grounding himself in the simple fact of warmth and breath. He did not feel anger. He did not feel betrayal. He felt the ache of understanding, sharpened by gratitude he had not expected. Rex had chosen distance so that attachment would not pull him back. Rex had chosen a disappearance that spared the house from becoming a vigil site. Michael recognized the choice for what it was, because he had made similar ones once, long ago, when staying would have endangered others. He prepared food and watched the puppy eat with the same steady confidence it had shown since the beginning. There was no confusion in the puppy's behavior, no searching that suggested loss. The lessons had already been absorbed. Michael felt the sting of that realization, pride braided tightly with grief. He sat on the floor afterward and let memory move without direction. He remembered the first night Rex had stayed awake beside him after the war, the way presence alone had been enough to anchor him through hours that threatened to unravel. He remembered how Rex had insisted on routines when Michael resisted structure, how patience had been enforced not through dominance, but through consistency. He remembered learning again how to exist in a world that no longer gave orders, guided instead by quiet signals and shared understanding. Those memories did not collapse into pain. They arranged themselves into something sturdier. The puppy approached then, not seeking comfort, but proximity, settling close enough that awareness overlapped. Michael felt the echo of Rex's positioning from the night before and understood it now as intention carried forward. This was the inheritance, not the house, not the routines, but the discipline of attention, the ethic of presence. He lifted the puppy carefully, not as one lifts something fragile, but as one accepts responsibility. The weight was real and grounding. He held the puppy against his chest and felt his breathing adjust to match the smaller rhythm. Outside, the wind moved through bare branches with a sound that reminded him of distant surf, of places he had not visited in years and no longer needed to. He did not look for signs. He did not ask the morning for answers. Rex had not left riddles behind. He had left clarity shaped like obligation. Michael stood and carried the puppy through the house, allowing it to learn the space not as a relic, but as a living environment. He set boundaries gently, corrected without urgency, mirrored the methods he had observed so closely. The puppy responded with immediate recognition, not obedience, but alignment. Michael felt something settle into place then, not replacing what was gone, but occupying the space it had prepared. He moved through the day deliberately, attending to simple tasks, letting the house reconfigure itself around a new constant. At one point, he paused at the door and opened it, letting cold air rush in. The yard lay quiet, offering nothing and demanding nothing. Michael nodded once, a gesture meant for no one and everyone. When evening approached, he returned to the floor with the puppy and sat where Rex had sat, positioning himself where sight lines overlapped and responsibility could be exercised without strain. He did not speak aloud. He did not need to. The puppy slept, untroubled, and Michael watched until the watching no longer felt like guarding, but like belonging. He understood then that the story had not ended with loss, but with transfer, not with disappearance, but with continuity enacted through choice. Rex had not taken himself away to diminish what remained. He had stepped aside so that what followed could stand without shadow. Michael accepted that with the steadiness it deserved. When night fell again, the house did not feel empty. It felt resolved. And as Michael finally allowed himself to rest, holding the living reminder of a bond forged through patience and trust, he carried forward what Rex had given him, not as memory alone, but as practice, renewed and intact. Sometimes miracles do not arrive with thunder or sudden healing. Sometimes they come quietly, wrapped in love, choice, and timing only God can see. Rex did not stay because he was meant to be saved. Rex stayed long enough to give what mattered most, and then trusted God with the rest. In our own lives, we often pray for miracles to change the ending, but perhaps the greater miracle is that God changes us instead, teaching us how to love deeper, let go gently, and carry forward what we were given. If this story touched your heart, let it be a reminder that you are never alone, even in loss, even in silence. God walks beside us in ways we do not always recognize until later. Please take a moment to share this story with someone who might need hope today. Leave a comment about where you are watching from or who you are praying for, and subscribe to the channel so these stories can continue to reach hearts around the world. May God bless you, protect your loved ones, and grant you peace in every season of your life.